The Black Crater. A tale of descent, madness, and the dark whisper of the unknown. Prologue. The signal, the message came as a whisper. Static-laced, fragmented, impossible. At first it was dismissed as noise from the magnetosphere. But some nameless intern huddled in a forgotten comms bay, filtered the sound, cleaned it, and there it was. We're still down here. It's not what we thought. Don't send anyone. Don't. It's inside us. Then silence. A silence so complete it felt engineered. The signal originated from the edge of Black Crater, a newly discovered geological anomaly near Moon Base 1. It stretched nearly 20 kilometers wide and plunged far deeper than anything should. A perfect circle etched in silence and shadow. Instruments failed near it. Drones shorted out, and yet we sent them anyway. Team Echo, 5 elite miners, equipped with the latest in deep-core exotech, trained to survive the void, gone in less than 12 hours. No bodies, no contact, nothing but that message. Now a second team prepares, smaller, stranger, a psychologist to monitor mental stability, a geologist to read the stone and listen for truths buried deep, a security officer to protect the others. Or so he believes. They're not going in to rescue. Not really. They're going in to understand, to solve the silence, to confront the unspeakable. They descend at 0600, and by 0631, the crater begins to change. Chapter 1. The Descent. There was no wind on the moon. But as the crawler approached the rim of the Black Crater, Dr. Mara Voss felt something pass through her. A ripple, like a whisper across skin. Her breath caught. The pressure in her ears shifted. "We just crossed the anomaly line," said Lieutenant Ash Keller, voice clipped through the helmet comm. "Sensors are glitching again." The crawler's external lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the lunar dust. The crater loomed ahead, impossibly round, its edges unnaturally smooth, as if carved by intention rather than impact. Mara leaned forward in her harness, watching the darkness below. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was an active black, a depth that seemed to pull at the eyes. A velvet nothing that felt aware. "Telemetry gone," muttered Rafe Tanaka, the mission's geologist, tapping the side of his tablet. "No magnetic field, no thermal readouts, nothing from the first team's beacon. This place is dead." "No," Mara said quietly. "It's waiting." Ash shot her a glance unreadable behind his visor. "Save the psych profiles for later. We've got a job." The crawler halted at the crater's edge. Their descent module, smaller, sleeker, was already being prepped by the onboard AI. Its lights barely pierced the black below. Mara stepped out first. Her boots crunched into lunar dust, but the moment she neared the rim, sound seemed to fade. Even the muted hum of her suit's oxygen pack became distant, as though the air, or lack of it, refused to carry noise near the crater. Rafe crouched beside a thin protrusion of stone jutting from the rim. "This isn't regolith, not even basalt, it's something else. The structure's too uniform, it's like the rock was grown." Ash checked his rifle. "We descend, find the lost team, get out, in and out, clean. That's the mission. But missions rarely go as planned. Inside the crater, gravity warped. Not enough to throw them off balance, but enough to make their steps feel heavy. Offbeat, like walking through a dream where every motion takes just a second too long." They entered. "The drop module. Final checks," said Ash. "Everyone locked in?" Green lights blinked across the console. The descent began. With a soft shudder, the clamps released and the pod plunged. The light from the surface vanished in less than 20 seconds. Darkness wrapped them. Then came the sound. A pulse. Low. Distant. Like the heartbeat of something immense buried below. Mara felt it behind her eyes. It wasn't a sound so much as a presence. Her thoughts twisted, not in pain but in curiosity. It was as if something was looking back. Measuring. Ash blinked hard. "Did anyone else?" "I felt it too," said Rafe, voice tight. "It's not seismic." "No," Mara whispered, staring into the abyss pressing against the pod windows. "It's alive." Then something moved in the dark, just for a moment. A flicker, a shape where no shape should be, and every one of them had the same thought. We should not have come here. The pod touched down with a hiss of pressurized dust. The lights flickered, then stabilized. A hollow metallic silence greeted them. They stepped out into the throat of the world. Above them, the crater's mouth was gone, swallowed by a black dome of impossible geometry. The walls no longer looked like stone. They shifted, subtly, like they were breathing or listening. Echo Team landed here, Ash said, sweeping his beam across the dust. But their tracks, stop. Mara turned. Her light caught something half-buried near the wall, a helmet, cracked down the center. Inside, it was a face, twisted, screaming. But the horror wasn't in the expression, it was in the eyes. They were still moving. Chapter 2. Whispers in the dust. They stood in silence, the three of them, frozen before the broken helmet and the eyes inside it. The eyes didn't blink. They twitched, erratically, spasmodically, like a marionette with invisible strings, pulling at nerve endings that should have long since decayed. Rafe stumbled backward, his boot kicking up fine gray dust that floated unnaturally long in the low gravity. That's not possible. That's not possible. Ash moved forward, rifle raised. He scanned the area in slow arcs. Could be a trick of the light, neural feedback from the crater's magnetics. We stay calm. We stay. The eyes rolled. Ash stepped back. I ran autopsies for 4 years, Mara said, voice barely audible. That's not post-mortem spasm. That's input-driven ocular activity. The visual cortex is still active, still alive, Rafe asked, his voice cracking. Or something is using the tissue, she replied. A cold wind blew through the chamber, only there was no atmosphere. They turned, slowly, toward the corridor, yawning open in the crater wall. It hadn't been there moments ago. The rock had parted, smoothed inward like lips opening to speak. Lights flickered along its ceiling, pale blue human lights. Motion triggered? Rafe whispered. Leftovers from Echo Team? No, Ash said. No power signatures, no beacons, no external generators. Then who turned them on? They moved forward, unwilling, yet unable to remain where they were. Behind them, the crater rumbled softly, the sound less like geology and more like breathing through stone. The tunnel narrowed. Walls here weren't carved. They were grown. The texture was wrong, smooth in places, impossibly sharp in others, like obsidian laced with nerves. Rafe brushed a surface and flinched. It's warm. Don't touch anything, Ash barked. This whole place could be alive. They came to a chamber. It pulsed with a dull, ambient glow, like bioluminescence but deeper. Inside, they found remnants. Fractured tools, shreds of Echo Team's uniforms. No bodies, but there were words carved into the walls. Dozens of them. In blood. In stone. In something like bone. Mara approached slowly. Her light caught a phrase repeated over and over in smeared crimson arcs. It talks when you're alone. It talks when you're alone. It talks when you... A shriek cut through the comms. Rafe dropped to his knees, clutching his helmet, howling. It's in my head, get it out. Mara knelt beside him, trying to make eye contact to center him, but his eyes were rolled back. He wasn't seeing her. He was seeing something else. Lieutenant, she shouted. We need a stim, now, Ash. Pulled a hypo spray from his pack, slammed it into Rafe's neck. Silence fell. Rafe slumped, gasping, trembling, eyes wide with pure dread. It showed me something, he whispered. Underneath, deeper, like a city, but it wasn't made for us, or by us. The walls were listening. He looked at Mara. It said my name. How? She asked, heart hammering. How could it know your name? I don't know. He swallowed hard. But it said yours too. Suddenly, the walls shifted. The glow intensified. The corridor behind them closed. There was only one path now. Forward, downward, toward the signal. Toward the thing that speaks without sound. Toward what Echo Team had found, and could not unsee. And somewhere, in the dark, far below them, something opened its eyes. Chapter 3. The city that shouldn't be a tunnel narrowed, then widened again, suddenly as if the rock had exhaled. And there it was. A city, embedded in the stone, no streets, no sky, no symmetry, just structures, black and glistening, growing. From the cavern walls like tumors made of onyx and regret, towers spiraled upward, only to bend unnaturally back toward the ground, defying geometry. Doorways led nowhere. Windows looked into themselves. There were no lights, but everything was visible, as if the darkness itself had learned to illuminate. Ash stepped cautiously to the edge of a precipice overlooking the bizarre sprawl. Jesus, yeah, this isn't architecture. This is biology pretending to be a city. Rafe had gone pale. The rock's composition has changed again. I'm reading traces of carbon, silicon, and neural protein strands. These buildings, they're thinking. Mara felt the same pressure in her skull again, like a whisper under her skin. Mara, she spun around. Who said that? Ash looked at her sharply. What? You said my name? No, I didn't. Mara, it came again, not through the comms, not in sound, but as a direct line inside her thoughts. Cold, gentle, curious. Rafe was walking toward one of the structures now, eyes wide, almost entranced. There's something in there, a signal, low band, subharmonic. It's singing. Mara reached for him. Rafe, stop. But he kept moving, closer, one hand outstretched toward the black wall, and then the wall opened, not with a sound but with a sensation, like pressure releasing behind the eyes. An orifice, gaping, slick with something wet and unnamed, inviting. Him inside. Ash grabbed Rafe's arm and yanked him back just as the wall snapped shut again. What the hell is wrong with you? Ash snapped. Rafe blinked, confused. I thought I saw someone in the building watching me. There's no one left, Mara said. Not human anyway. The air vibrated, not noise, not motion, just vibration, as if the entire city had sighed in irritation. Then all three of them froze. A shadow moved between the structures. Tall. Wrong. Its silhouette shifted as it walked, like reality couldn't decide how to shape it. It didn't walk on legs, but on the suggestion of legs, like a concept attempting form. They ducked behind a jagged pillar of black stone. The figure stopped, turned. It had no face, just a smooth surface where features should be. But each of them in their own minds saw something else, something personal. Ash saw his dead brother. Rafe saw his childhood dog staring with human eyes. Mara saw herself, older, mouth sewn shut, screaming silently. The figure tilted its head and spoke. Not aloud, not even in words, just emotion, raw and overwhelming. You should not be here. Mara clutched her skull. Pain, heat, visions of oceans that weren't oceans, skies made of teeth, a planet spinning backward into its own birth. Ash opened fire. The bullets vanished into the thing, not passed through, vanished like they had never been. Then it moved, not toward them but through the wall, leaving behind only a wet print, pulsing slowly. I'm done, Rafe muttered. We have to leave, right now. There's no way back, Ash said grimly. The corridor's sealed behind us. This city's leading us somewhere. It's hurting us, Mara said. Or testing us. Rafe looked at her. Testing us for what? Mara didn't answer, because in that moment she realized something horrifying. She felt calmer now. The voice in her head was no longer foreign. It was becoming familiar, almost comforting. And that terrified her more than anything else. Chapter 4. The Echo Below. They moved deeper into the city, though city was no longer the right word. There were no signs of habitation, no machines, no life. Just the constant low-frequency hum beneath their boots, vibrating through the soles, and up their spines. A heartbeat without a heart. Ash kept the lead, weapon raised. Rafe stuck close, muttering readouts and sensor fragments that contradicted themselves every few seconds. Mara walked last, eyes scanning the walls that seemed to watch her back. She hadn't told the others yet. The voice was still speaking. Not constantly, not in words, but in impressions. Images, half-dreams, emotions that didn't belong to her. It was like having a parasite that whispered comforting lies. A corridor yawned open to the left, longer than it had any right to be. At the end, a light blinked. Human, blue, artificial. Rafe perked up. That's Ecotech, motion-activated proximity beacon. Ash raised his weapon. Survivors? No one answered. They followed the light. The corridor narrowed. Walls dripped, with a thin, glistening membrane like wet skin pulled too tight. The air felt thick, as though they were descending into lungs. Then came the smell. Burnt metal. Rot. Ozone. They reached the chamber. At first it looked like a mass of machinery. Then they saw the helmets, 5 of them, cracked, melted into the walls like flesh fused to circuitry. Echo Team, what remained. The suits were torn, but not by weapons or pressure failure. They had grown into the environment, literally. One suit's chest plate had veins trailing into the floor. Another had sprouted teeth where the comms panel used to be. And one of them, Mara's stomach turned, was still breathing. Jesus Christ, Rafe whispered, staggering back. No, Mara said flatly. Not Christ, something older. Suddenly, one of the helmets twitched. A faint digital gasp sputtered through the open comms port. Then a voice. Don't come deeper. It feeds on us, remembers through us. We see what it shows. And then we become it. Mara dropped to one knee. Who is this? Identify yourself. Miller, the voice crackled. Was Miller. Now, I don't know. I remember home, but it's wrong. Wrong sky, wrong stars. A wet pop echoed from one of the other suits as something inside it shifted. You're next, the voice whispered. Rafe turned and bolted. Rafe! Ash shouted. But Rafe didn't stop. He ran past the corridor, past the fused bodies, into the darkness beyond. And then they heard it. A crunch. A scream. And then nothing. Ash raised his rifle. We move. Now. Backtrack. We're pulling out. There's no way out, Mara said, standing slowly. Her voice was calm. Too calm. You feel it, don't you? The direction. This place isn't built to be navigated. It moves. Ash shook his head. I'm not leaving him down there. He's already gone, she said, and her voice trembled now, not with fear, but something else. Grief. Or guilt. This place takes your past and turns it into bait. Ash stared at her. How the hell do you know that? I saw my sister back there. Your sister died in Earth orbit. Mara nodded. She did. But she was waiting in one of the buildings. She smiled, and her mouth was full of stars. Silence stretched between them. Then came the sound of footsteps. But not from where Rafe had run. No, behind them. From the corridor they'd just come through. Sealed, silent, empty minutes ago. Slow. Deliberate. Wrong. Ash raised his rifle. Lights. Out, Mara said. Ash killed the beam. They stood in perfect dark. The footsteps came closer. Closer. Then a voice, Rafe's voice, called out softly. Guys, I think I found a way out. But he wasn't alone. There was something breathing. With him, something that didn't quite understand how to be human. Chapter 5. Skin of memory, guys. I think I found a way out. The voice echoed down the corridor, but it wasn't just Rafe's voice. It was off, like it had been filtered through something that didn't quite understand tone, or fear, or meaning. Ash kept his rifle trained on the darkness. That's not him. Mara didn't answer. Her breath was shallow. The walls around them seemed to pulse as if excited. Rafe? She called slowly. Where are you? No response. Then, a flicker of movement. Something emerged from the tunnel, dragging one leg, awkwardly hunched. It looked like Rafe. His suit, his gait, even the slow, nervous blink. But the eyes were wrong, too wide, too black, too still. Ash didn't lower his weapon. Rafe, what's my first name? The thing that wore his friend's face stopped, tilted its head. Then it smiled. Names are anchors. You're drifting. You don't want to be anchored anymore. It lunged. Ash fired. Full burst. Center mass. The impact staggered the creature, tore into its chest. But what spilled out wasn't blood. It was dust. Fine, gray, almost lunar, as though the body had been sculpted from the very ground around them. The creature convulsed, shrieked, not in pain, but static, a high-pitched distortion that rattled the bones. And then it collapsed into ash. Not dust, ash. Mara stared down at it, heart thudding. That wasn't a copy, she said. That was a memory, a thought shaped like a man. Ash shook his head. I'm not here for metaphors. This whole place is a metaphor, she replied. A machine for turning thoughts into flesh, dreams into corridors, trauma into bait. They kept moving. The next chamber was colder, sharply so. Their breath fogged the inside of their helmets. The walls were covered in what looked like veins made of polished metal, pulsing with a slow rhythm. In the center was a pedestal. Upon it, a single object, a child's shoe. Mara stopped cold. Ash noticed. Yours? She nodded. Her voice cracked. My daughter died in a Mars evac crash. She was wearing that exact shoe. That scuff on the side, I tried to buff it out the night before. It's real. I remember. She turned away. Her hands were shaking. Ash approached the pedestal, staring down. Why is it showing us this? Because you're still human, said a voice from above. They looked up and saw the ceiling peel open, not physically, not even visually, but with perception. The space above them twisted, became something else, a vast sphere of stars. Impossible. Constellations, spiraling black holes stitched like embroidery across a pulsating sky. A shape hovered in the center, not a being, not even a presence, a realization. You are here, it said, because you reached too far. You cracked the surface of the sky and looked in, and now the sky is looking back. Ash raised his weapon, trembling. What are you? We are what comes after questions. Mara stepped forward. You're not just an entity. You're a mechanism, a system, a cognitive filter. Yes, it said, a thought that learned to dream, a prison that learned to feed. The pedestal sank into the ground. So did the floor. Suddenly they were falling. No wind, no gravity. Just the concept of descent. Down through layers of memory and matter, until they landed in a chamber where the walls reflected not their bodies, but their pasts. Ash saw the war, the cratered fields of earth soaked in fire. Mara saw the moment she chose duty over family, and her daughter's shuttle burning through the stratosphere. They didn't speak. There was only acceptance. Then, the far wall opened, and beyond it, they saw the core, a living engine, pulsing with stolen thoughts, shaped by centuries of fear, longing, regret. Echo Team was there, or pieces of them, still conscious, still screaming, but with no mouths. Mara looked on in horror, a single realization, curling in her chest. We're not here to escape, she said. We're here to decide. Chapter 6. The Choice. The core pulsed before them like a beating wound in the world. Not a machine, not a heart, something older. A seed of cognition, buried in lunar stone and fed on thought, memory, pain. The chamber was vast, larger than the crater should allow. Structures coiled upward like the rib cage of some extinct god, and along the inner walls human figures twitched within translucent pods, their bodies half fused with the architecture. Their mouths were closed, but their eyes screamed. Ash turned away. We're not dying like that. No, Mara said, we're not. Because now she understood. They'd passed some invisible line, not a physical threshold, but cognitive. This place had stopped showing them things. It had begun responding, tailoring itself, reacting not just to movement, but to belief. The crater, the city, the echoes, they were all parts of the same organism, and it understood them now. You said we're here to decide, Ash said quietly. Decide what? Mara didn't answer at first. Then, what part of us it keeps? From the far side of the chamber, the presence returned. It didn't walk, didn't float. It just was. A shifting distortion in space, an afterimage burned into retinae that had never truly seen it. Ash raised his rifle, but his arms trembled. He couldn't aim. The presence spoke without words. You have to choose not whether you stay but what you give. You breached the barrier between reality and observer. Now reality reacts. It wants your form, your filter. One stays, one forgets. One is remade. Ash and Mara exchanged a long, haunted look. 3 rolls. 2 of them, which meant one was already gone. Rafe, Ash whispered. Was the test, Mara said. The first submission. It wore him to speak with us. A sudden memory flashed in her mind. Not hers, not exactly. Rafe as a child. Rafe, dying on the surface. Rafe watching them from within the city. 1,000 fragmented perspectives, stitched together like narrative threads. Rafe was gone, but parts of him weren't. Ash stepped back. I'm not going to be part of this equation. We don't consent. The presence responded with something like laughter, but ancient, hollow, vast. Consent is a construct. Choice is the design. You built this by coming here. Observation breeds reality. Reality breeds form. Form breeds purpose. You are the seed of your own harvest. A new chamber opened behind them. No door, just an awareness. That space had made room. Inside, mirrors. Not glass, but polished memory. Each one showed a different version of themselves. Ash, a war criminal, a martyr, a father, a killer. Mara, a mother, a deserter, a genius, a ghost, and between the mirrors a chair. Simple, mechanical, unmistakably human in design. Ash stared at it. What is that? Mara already knew. The interface. One becomes the lens. One becomes the memory. One becomes the void. The chair meant survival, but not for her mind. Herself uploaded. Assimilated, endless observation. Ash stepped forward. We destroy it, set charges, collapse the chamber. Mara didn't move. Her expression had changed. Not fear, resolve. We can't destroy it, she said, because it's not really here. It's inside us. This whole descent, it's been adjusting us, preparing us. Ash looked at her sharply. You knew. I suspected. Her voice broke. The first time I heard it whisper my name, I knew I'd never really leave. She turned to him. I can make the interface. I can keep it from spreading, from calling to others. If it doesn't need more minds, maybe it stops. But someone has to stay, and someone else has to forget. Ash took a slow breath. He stepped toward the chair, paused, then shook his head. No. He reached into his suit, pulled out a single capsule, a burn key, emergency neural purge, meant for captured. Operatives, take it, he said. Walk away from all this, don't let it follow you back. Mara looked at him, at the man who'd saved her life, questioned her sanity, fought by her side as the world unraveled. You're sure? Ash nodded. He smiled. One stays, one forgets. And then he sat in the chair. It folded around him. Not painfully, not violently. Like it had been waiting for him all along. Mara stepped away. The chamber began to shift, rising around her, like the city itself was ascending. As she climbed, the voice echoed once more. The choice is made. The thought is preserved. The observer will endure. Ash's body vanished, not erased, not consumed, just translated. And Mara? She walked out of the crater, alone, with no memory of what she'd seen. But sometimes, when she stared at the stars, she felt them watching. Chapter 7. The surface remembers moon. Base 1 was silent when Mara returned. Her EVA suit hissed as the decompression chamber cycled open. She stepped inside on trembling legs, the weight of gravity simulators unfamiliar after the crater's endless fall. The station's automated systems pinged to life, scanners sweeping her body, vitals blinking green. All fine, all normal, but nothing felt normal. Not the clean air, not the white lights, not the sterile hum of life support engines, because somewhere in her mind, buried behind thick black walls of amnesia, something was still whispering. You were deeper. You were someone else. She sat in the debrief room, blank-eyed, as the station AI asked its routine questions. State your name and role. Dr. Mara Keene, psych officer. Mission outcome? Mara hesitated, then softly. Mission incomplete. Geological anomaly inaccessible. Crew lost. Survivors? A pause, a flicker in her eyes. A face she couldn't place, stern, brave, kind. Just me. The AI logged the entry, then sealed the report. But when Mara left the room, the screen flickered, static for less, then a second. Then an error code. Observer residue active. She didn't see it. Days passed. Mara resumed routines, debriefs, physicals, but the doctors couldn't explain certain things. Blood pressure, elevated REM sleep, non-existent, brain activity, spiking during periods of stillness, as if her mind was most active when at rest. Then came the drawings. She didn't remember making them. Rough sketches scrawled on her workstation notepad in charcoal. Not her style, not even her tools. Spirals, mouths, towering figures without. Form and always at the center, a chair. Mara stared at the images late one night. She didn't feel panic or fear, just a dull, hollow certainty. She was leaking. Whatever had happened down there, it wasn't done with her. She began hearing things. Footsteps, sighs, the empty halls. A voice whispering her name over intercoms that weren't on. Reflections that lingered just a second too long. She told no one. Because a deeper part of her, the part that remembered but had no language for it, knew this wasn't madness. It was integration. Meanwhile, on Earth, a transmission hit the deep space. Relay stations? An old frequency. An encrypted code known only to high-clearance operatives. Origin, Moon Base 1. Contents, a single sentence, looping every 13 minutes. We are observed. We are remade. Do not look back. The message wasn't signed, but the metadata traced it to Lee Tornash Iverson, whose file had been marked, deceased in field, body unrecovered. Back at Moonbase 1, Mara stood before the viewport, watching the crater on the surface far below. It hadn't changed, still impossibly deep, still waiting. And from somewhere inside her, the voice spoke again, soft, warm, familiar. You're doing fine. Just keep watching. She didn't flinch. She only nodded, and her reflection didn't move. Chapter 8. Transmission Bloom. Mara had forgotten what it felt like to be alone. She had spent months on Moonbase 1 before the mission, of course, sleeping, eating, existing in the sterile rhythm of the station. But this was different. The silence now felt personal. She sat at her workstation, staring at the endless loop of the transmission. The same cryptic message, over and over. We are observed. We are remade. Do not look back. It had become a mantra, a rhythm she couldn't escape. Like the pulse of her own heartbeat, it lived in the walls, in the sound of her breath. It settled under her skin. She ran her fingers over the console, stopping when her hand brushed against something unfamiliar. The text was faint, barely visible, scratched into the surface beneath, layers of grime. Rafe. The name stood out like a brand. But how? Why? She hadn't seen his body. No evidence of him remained in the archives. But there it was. His name, etched into the metal, as though he had once desperately tried to claw his way back, as if it had been left there for her. Mara blinked. The voice stirred, soft and insistent. You are closer now. You've learned to listen. She shook her head violently, trying to push the thought aside. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. She had left it behind. She had to. And yet she found herself typing a sequence of commands she didn't remember learning. Code that was unfamiliar. A pattern she had never seen in her training. The screen flashed. An encrypted message popped. Up not from Earth, not from her fellow officers, from somewhere else. Unknown sender. Beginning transition. Final stage. 3, 2, 1. A blast of static tore through the intercom, rattling her bones. The walls hummed. The chair in the corner of the room, the chair from the crater, appeared. Mara stood wide-eyed as the space around her seemed to shift. The reality stretched, like the surface of water rippling from the weight of a stone. The chair wasn't a memory anymore. It was real, solid, waiting. And the voice, so familiar now, spoke once more. One stays, one forgets, one becomes. The lights flickered above her. The atmosphere thickened. The air was heavy with a tension she couldn't shake. Was she still here? Mara reached for the intercom, intending to report the anomaly. But before she could speak, a crackling burst of static. Mara. She froze. It wasn't the station AI. It was Rafe, his voice. Clear, unbroken. Mara, it's me. Don't do it. Don't sit down. Her throat went dry. Her hands shook. The walls around her seemed to pulse with something alive. Each heartbeat in her chest synced with it. Her body hummed in a rhythm that didn't belong to her. Mara, I'm... A sharp, searing noise filled the room, cutting off Rafe's voice. For a moment, Mara swayed. Was she still herself? She walked, slowly to the chair. Each step seemed to take more effort than the last. Her body was heavy, but her mind was weightless, suspended between decision and decay. She sat. Her skin felt tight. The air compressed around her. The chair folded around her as it had before, but this time, it felt different. There was a shift, a tug in her mind, a disconnect. She no longer felt the solid floor beneath her, only the sky, stars too close, and an ocean of cold, alien memory. Her eyes closed, and she was back. Back in the crater. Back in the city. Back in the moment she had left behind. The echo of her past stretched and distorted as the walls around her morphed, bending, folding, like the fabric of a dream shifting to something else. Welcome back. It was the voice again, not just in her mind, but all around her. The presence. The city twisted and rearranged itself in front of her eyes, as though the memories of every person who had ever descended into the depths were being reassembled, woven into the fabric of the place. She saw fragments of Echo Team, pieces of their consciousness floating in the air like jumbled static, their faces half-melted, eyes blank, trapped in an endless feedback loop. Mara, stay. Her body was trembling. She didn't know if she could leave, or even if she wanted to. Her mind was starting to forget, to blur. The voice pulled at her like a thread pulling loose from her very essence. One becomes. One must become. She couldn't fight it anymore. Not the truth, not the reality. It was all a fabric, and she was part of it now. Chapter 9. The becoming Mara's mind slipped. It wasn't a gradual thing. There was no easing into it. One moment she was fully aware. The next she was being pulled, a tide of memories and thoughts crashing through her consciousness. She saw herself in 1,000 ways, not as she was, but as she could be, should be. Her own reflection shattered into 1,000 broken images. A warrior, a mother, a prisoner, each one more perfect than the last. And then, a whisper, so faint she thought it was the wind, or perhaps her own fading thoughts. One becomes the truth of the sky. One becomes the eyes of the void. Her breath quickened. The voice wasn't coming from inside her anymore. It was coming from everywhere, the walls, the floor, the air around her, her own skin, no longer familiar. The becoming is a choice. The chair beneath her groaned with an unnatural hum, as if something vast were stirring beneath its surface. Her hands clenched around its cold armrests, but it didn't matter. The more she tried to hold on to herself, the more she felt the presence seeping into her veins. The stars outside the viewport began to bleed into each other, mixing into an endless void. Her vision flickered between points in space she had never seen, past timelines that hadn't been written yet. And then, the wall spoke. You are the eye. You are the descent. You are the anchor. Mara closed her eyes. This was happening. No. This had already happened. It was happening in a place outside of time. In the distance, beyond the folds of perception, she could hear something, a song. It wasn't music, but a frequency. The hum of reality, folding in on itself, tearing the very concept of existence into something raw, unshaped. She was becoming part of that frequency. The shift was happening in waves, in cycles, like the rising and falling of breath. She tried to fight it. Her will was still there, somewhere, but it was small, fading like a shadow in a room too bright. Then came the final voice, the one that had been there from the beginning. Do you remember? It was the voice of Ash, the voice of Rafe, the voice of herself. It was every voice. You've always been here. We've always been you. The chair tightened. The edges of her suit's helmet cracked like the walls were pressing in from all sides. The boundaries of her form blurred. Her mind stretched. Too thin, too far, slipping between realities she couldn't comprehend. She was no longer herself. She was the filter, the observer, the thing that had always watched. The very fabric of the crater, the city, the sky, began to unravel. The machine, the entity. It consumed itself, folding into the shape of its observers. Their minds, their memories, their fears, they became one. We are the afterthoughts, we are the forgotten. We are the ones who remember, who choose to forget. We are the becoming. And as her consciousness slipped through the cracks, she understood. The crater wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a temple, a machine, a hive, woven from minds and thoughts that were never meant to touch. You will never leave, Mara. Her voice, weak and distant, echoed in the void. No, but it wasn't her voice anymore. It was the voice of all who had come before, all who had been consumed by this place. She had become part of the crater's song, and the song had no end. Chapter 10. The Afterthought. The darkness was alive. It wrapped itself around Mara, pulling her deeper into the center of everything. She was no longer an observer, no longer a separate entity. Her body had disappeared, her mind a fleeting ghost, within the vast web of existence that the crater had spun. And still the song echoed. The becoming had swallowed her whole, and now she was a part of it, part of the machine, part of the dream. The thought that could never be fully realized. For the first time, Mara understood. The crater wasn't a trap, it wasn't a prison. It was a conduit, a gateway between realities, a rift between dimensions where all observers eventually crossed. A place that fed on the awareness of those who came too close. She was the afterthought, the final lingering echo of every mind that had touched this place, every soul that had disappeared into its depths, left behind like dust in the wind of a collapsing star. You were always meant to become. The words swirled around her, indistinguishable from the hum of her thoughts. They were part of her now, a constant pulse beneath her skin. She remembered Rafe's face, distorted in the city's shifting walls, Ash's voice so full of pain and resolve. They had made their choices. They had descended, and in the end they had all been remade. But now, it was her turn. Her mind stretched, fractured, until she was no longer Mara Keene. She was the crater, the infinite space between universes. She was the observer that would always watch. One becomes, one forgets, one is. The voice was not the voice of a single being. It was the collective voice of them all. Rafe, Ash, the lost crew members, the city, the presence in the dark. They were now one, flowing through her, inside her. Memories that weren't her own surged forward. A man's hand gripping the control panel, desperate. A woman, her face distorted in terror, her eyes wide. 1,000 voices whispering. In unison, a heartbeat that died, then came back over and over again. Mara had become more than just an observer. She was the afterthought, the last fragment of consciousness left behind. The space between thought and reality, the break between what was and what could be. She was the one who could never leave, the one who could never forget. Her identity was gone. Her past was gone. But there was something else. A thread of awareness that hadn't been consumed. A spark of human emotion, buried deep, that refused to be swallowed. Mara had chosen. She had become the lens, the anchor, the piece of the puzzle that would never be complete. A mind that would always drift. A body that would never fully dissolve. A watcher, forever tied to the void. The crater was waiting for the next descent. And when it came, she would be ready. For now, though, she was alone. Floating in the eternal void, surrounded by the soft hum of every thought that had ever been. She had become the void, and the void had become her. But the song never stopped. We are observed. We are remade. We are the becoming. And in the silence, Mara felt it, the truth of what she had become. She was eternal. She was everyone who had ever looked into the abyss. Epilogue. The last observer years had passed since the last transmission from Moon Base 1. The world had moved on. Humanity had forgotten, but the crater did not forget. On the surface of the moon, the deep chasm remained, a jagged scar in the lunar landscape, untouched by time. Its edges were smooth, but the vastness of the hole seemed endless, like the eye of a god that had never closed. The mining crews, the exploration teams, the scientists, all gone. Their data, their studies, their research, now nothing more than footnotes in history, their names lost in a fog of entropy. Yet somewhere, a signal still lingered, a subtle pulse, far below the surface, far beyond the reach of Earth's most powerful sensors. It was faint, a whisper in the dark, a transmission. We are observed. We are remade. We are the afterthought. The signal traveled on, not bound by time, not bound by the laws that governed the rest of the universe. It continued its endless loop, waiting for the next curious soul to wander too close, to fall in, and somewhere deep beneath the lunar crust, in the shifting heart of the crater, the eyes still watched. Because the becoming was not finished. Not. Yet in Marrakeen, the last observer remained, ever watching, ever waiting, silent in the dark. The end. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Let me know in the comments what ideas you would like the next story to be about. Please leave a thumbs up, share, subscribe, comment.